the covenant of old, and your love is enduring through the winter rain and beyond the horizon, with mercy for today. And faithful you have been, and faithful you will be. You pledge yourself to me, and it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. You father the orphan, your kindness makes us whole, and you shoulder our weakness, and your strength becomes our own. And you're making me like you, clothing me in white, bringing beauty from ashes. And you will have your bride, free of all her sin, and rid of all her shame, and known by her true name. And it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. And you will be praised, you will be praised, with angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And you will be praised, and you will be praised, with angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And you will be praised, and you will be praised, with angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And you will be praised, and you will be praised, with angels and saints we sing, worthy are you, Lord. And it's why I sing. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. Your praise will ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips.
Hello and welcome to Gathering Point. My name is Justin. I'm part of the team at Gathering Point, and we're thrilled that you're with us today. If it's your first time, we'd love to say hello and get to know you a little more. We've made it easy to connect together. Simply text us the word GP Guest to 97000, and we'll immediately text you back, and we have a gift for you as a way to welcome you to Gathering Point. We'd also like to invite you to join us in the room as we continue to host in-person services at 9 and 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. Whenever you're ready to take that next step, we'd love to have you here in the auditorium. Our next series begins next Sunday, so tickets are available now, and you can follow all of the details on how to reserve your spot on our website at gatheringpoint.church. Today, Pastor Paul will continue and wrap up our series, Listen to This.
Have you ever done this? I was doing this the other day. I had one of those conversations with my children, and they were trying to tell me something, and I was sort of like politely nodding along, and they keep talking, and I'm nodding, and I, just kind of like bouncing my head. I don't even remember what I was doing. I don't know if I was looking at my phone, or if I was on an email, or if I was watching TV. I don't even remember what it was. But I found myself in one of these patterns. Maybe you've done it before too, where you go, yeah, okay, sure, yeah. And that was working fine until it wasn't. Right? I got asked this very condemning question. Dad, are you listening to me? The answer was no. I mean, I got caught. I heard the words coming out of someone's mouth, and I could hear that they were talking in my direction, but I had absolutely no idea what was actually being said in that moment, and it was really kind of embarrassing to get caught. It's always embarrassing to get caught. And the truth is, I, like you, we hear a lot. I hear a lot. I could hear the noise and I could hear the motion, and sometimes it's so repetitive that I often figure out, I think I probably know what's being said, so I really don't need to focus that much, because maybe it's like something that was already said previously, or it's just a repetition. But the truth is, we often don't listen well very often. And so what I want to look at and talk about today is, what's the X factor? Like, what makes something interesting, and what makes us lean in and kind of pay attention and causes us to hear something? Because most studies will tell you that, we're interested in things. I mean, we're interested in new things. If I tell you something shocking, you're going to lean in and go, no way. If I tell you something that's complex, or if I give you gossip, or something that's innovative or controversial or political or religious or any of those things, fun things, anything, I can share something that's fun. I mean, the thing is, those are great lists of things that could be interesting, but the problem with interesting is all those things are subjective. Because what I find interesting, or what I find compelling, or what I find shocking is probably different than what you find compelling or shocking. So for us to agree on something that's interesting, what I find interesting may not be interesting to you at all, which is why some of you have more TVs in your house than you have people. It's because you're all going to different places, because what you find interesting is different than what someone else finds interesting. So the challenge is, how do you get someone to listen, to like really listen, when what's interesting to my 5-year-old daughter is totally different than what's interesting to my 13-year-old son? How do we begin to find the same things interesting? When such subjective definitions of interesting, how was Jesus able to make something captivating, make something compelling to not only his audiences 2,000 years ago, but how then is it supposed to be compelling to us now, here in the year that we live? And how has something that was given 2,000 years ago continued to be, through multiple languages, through different time periods, and all the different variables that have taken place from then until now? I mean, you think about that and you just got to pause and wonder. The baffling thing about this is that Jesus came and he talked to religious leaders, right? He came and yet he didn't spend any time with religious people. I mean, he was the Son of God, sent from God, but he didn't really hang out with godly people. And yet those people who had nothing in common with him, those people found him interesting. And they had nothing like it, and Jesus liked them back, and they liked him. And the other surprising thing about it is that irreligious people that weren't even interested at all, they loved to hear Jesus speak. They found it interesting. I mean, think about it. The people who could care less about religion would come in massive crowds and sit and listen and pay attention to what he had to say. And the people that felt most uncomfortable, like going to the temple, the people that were like, I can't go to the temple, I've done too much, I've got too much sin, they're going to frown upon me because I'm not keeping the laws. The people that were afraid to go to the temple flocked to see Jesus. And you know what? I think that's interesting. Because he kept these people engaged. All people. He kept all people all throughout history engaged. And one of the ways that he kept them engaged was through these things called parables. I mean, he used to make a point about something and about how he would let people know how God actually viewed people. And one of the most interesting stories that he tells, and you've probably heard it before, it's a very famous story, it's lasted the test of time, is a story about lost things that he starts to tell in Luke chapter 15. And in Luke chapter 15, Jesus begins to tell this story, and people they found it shocking, they found it revolting, but certainly they found it interesting, and they listened to it. I want to tell you the story. So Jesus is gathered around, and he starts, Luke chapter 15, verse 1. We'll start there. He says, now the tax collectors and the sinners, they're all gathered around to hear Jesus. I mean, that was the go-to like adjectives of the time. I mean, it was tax collectors, and those are the people, that people didn't really like, and then sinners those were men and women who knew God's laws but decided they weren't going to live by God's laws, and they kind of did what they want. And so then you had religious leaders who were also in the category, and they were around him, and they didn't really like him at all. So all of these people who are around here, and Jesus begins to talk to them. And so he says, verse 2, but the Pharisees, who are the people that he should have liked and the people who should have found Jesus most interesting, the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, well, this man, and he uses some adjectives, this man welcomes sinners and he eats with them. And essentially, what the religious people were doing were dividing people into two categories. Good people, bad people. People I agree with, people I disagree with. People I like, people I don't like that. Now, think about this for just a second and we'll keep going. How many of you have recently labeled people in those categories? These are the people that are right, these are the people that are wrong. These are the people that are good, these are the people that are bad. These are the people I agree with, these are the people that I disagree with. And so Jesus begins to go into this moment, and he tells them this parable, and he begins to go. In verse 3, Jesus tells them this parable. Then he says this, verse 4. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and his neighbors together and says, hey, rejoice with me. I have found my lost sheep. Now, when we lose something of value, I think one of the things that we oftentimes neglect to do is we forget to realize what's unlost, right? I mean, I think when I go, honey, I lost my car keys, but it's okay, I'm not worried about them because I still have my cell phone. Right? I think when we talk about lost things and going for lost things, I think we forget about like the unlost versus the lost and how important it is. We don't like trade one for the other. One time we went to the zoo, and we were walking around with our kids, and one of the kids was just lost even for just a few seconds. And I didn't say to Aaron, Aaron, it's fine, it's okay. We still have the other two. Right? That's not how lost things work. But when you and I hear that and we go, oh, they got 99, one, it doesn't matter. But if we talk about our kids and we go, well, we lost one, but we still got two, we're probably okay. Let's keep going, all right? Let's go see where the giraffes are. That's how Jesus wanted these people to view this. So verse 7, he continues. He says, I tell you, that in the same way there's going to be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need to repent. Now this is problematic in two ways. One, it's offensive to the Pharisees, and it's insulting to the sinners. Because when you think about something that you've lost, when you lose something that's extremely valuable, it's not helpful to think about all the stuff that you've not lost. Right? So all the men in the audience were shaking their heads, religious and irreligious people, and everybody goes to focus on one thing. So Jesus starts another story, and this time he starts talking about a coin. And he says, okay, all right, so that one made everybody mad. Let's try a new one. Or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. I mean, maybe this was an engagement coin, maybe these were a dowry that was passed down. And doesn't she, and then he continues, doesn't she light a lamp and continue to sweep the entire house and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls all her friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin. Because when we go and we lose something of great value, we'll search everywhere until we find it. But here's what he's talking about. There's two kind of words that he's talking about, things that are lost and things that are not lost. And what he wants his audience and what he wants his listeners to know is that God, has God lost track of the sinners? It's not like, where did they go? That's not really his question. I think sometimes sinners wish that God would lose track of them. Like, I've just done too bad. I wish God would stop trying to find me. I know I've messed up. I know that I messed up. But this isn't about like knowing where something is spatially or figuring out where that was. It's about knowing where something is relationally. Because haven't we all at some point in our life lost a relationship? This is what Jesus is talking about as he begins to go. And he tells the story of a father whose youngest son can't wait for him to die. And he starts telling this relationship parable as he begins to go. And he starts talking about a story about a father who has lost a relationship with his son. And the son has been like relationally gone. And the thing about this is the story, the father and the son, their relationship was lost well before the son leaves, right? I mean, isn't that true? A relationship is lost long before the actual moment of leaving or departure takes place. The father wanted to reconnect so much that the father chose the shortest way to connect to my son is I'm going to fund his departure. I'm going to pay for his departure because I think that'll be the shortest route for him to come back so that we can have a relationship again. And his audience heard the father loved his son more than he loved his reputation in the community. I mean, that's literally what he had. And they thought this guy is a fool. This guy is not very bright. If he's going to fund his child's departure, this is not somebody that I'm going to be friends with. It's not somebody I'm going to talk to. But he was willing to lose him, his son. He was willing to fund that to gain him. And eventually, his son is overwhelmed by the realization that he's disconnected from relationship with his father and that he was missing home, and he was wondering if home was missing him. And so, Jesus continues on this story in Luke chapter 15, verse 20. So this is what he did. So he got up, went to his father, and what happened next? I mean, it blew everybody's mind in Jesus' audience, and they all found this interesting. Because they didn't share Jesus's like good person, bad person views of how this whole thing went off. But when he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son and he threw his arms around him. And you know, they look at this and they go, wait a second. God desires a relationship. This isn't God doesn't want a GPS coordinate about you. He wants a proximity to you relationally. And then the father, kisses his son, and the audience starts gagging, I'm sure, because all of a sudden this guy's dirty and unclean. And they keep dropping adjectives, right? He's unclean, he's dirty, he's unacceptable, because there are like, we have acceptable people and unacceptable people. We have clean people and unclean people. We have sinners and non-sinners. We have people we agree with and people we disagree with. And the father kisses this one who just has been disgusting. Verse 21, the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. Which is essentially saying, Dad, I've kind of been lost on purpose. And the dad looks at him and goes, yeah, I know. But now you're back on purpose. Verse 22, the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. And let's have a feast and celebrate it. For the son of mine that was dead is alive again. He was lost and is now found. He was dead, now alive, lost, found, disconnected, connected. And the way Jesus sees people, and this is his point, is that the reason Jesus prioritized people disconnected from God is because they were disconnected from God. And he wanted to help create that connection again. And because of this, we begin to see that God views people like sheep. We see viewing people like coins. We see God viewing people like when you lose your cell phone, when you lose your keys. We see God viewing people the exact same way, which is everything stops until you find your phone back. Everything stops until you get your keys. Everything stops until you find your kid when you get disconnected at Walmart and you find them underneath a rack of clothing or something like that when they're little and all this. Everything stops until what is lost is found, because just because we have other stuff that's safe doesn't mean that we don't have value for that other piece. because he views everyone with great value. And I think the reason Jesus was so focused on sinners, I think the reason he was so focused on sinners is because he felt like he had lost them. And he wanted the sinners to know, I'm looking for you relationally. And I think oftentimes the gravitational pull towards places like this, like churches, is always towards those who are connected. And I think we sometimes run the risk of prioritizing words. I think we run the risk of saying people are good, or they're bad, or they're conservative, or they're liberal, or they're young, or they're old. And I feel like we run real risk, real danger when we start putting people in certain categories. And I feel like we can run real danger if all we focus on is who's here, and we stop being concerned about those who aren't. Because when we lose our concern about disconnected people and we start being more concerned about who we're keeping rather than we're reaching, I think this is why today we start, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join us online, and I hope you continue to do this, and I'm so glad you're able to connect this way. But this is why when we meet together online each and every week, we say we're only going to meet for 30 minutes online. Because we want to continue to show respect for the values and views for us, for other people who don't share our values and views, right? We want to show respect to those people, and I think Christianity and your particular views on life or your particular views on politics is under attack. And this week I had somebody who just kind of blew up on something, and they were so defensive about their views and about all the things that were under attack in their life and in our nation and all this. And I kind of paused and thought for a second, and I just kind of said, you know what? Self-defense of your views and what you think is right, self-defense is not a fruit of the Spirit. Self-control is. Maybe don't post or share or like the next time that comes up. And then for those of you who are still demanding that, we come back into the building without restrictions and all this is crazy and chaotic and all this, remember, we're called to spread the gospel, not a virus. So, glad I got that out of the way, right? I mean, I feel better about it. How about you? Because here's what I think. Everything everybody does makes perfect sense to them, makes perfect sense to me. What I do makes sense to me. What you do makes perfect sense to you. But let's continue to allow the space and the grace for others who don't share the same views that we do. For those that don't share the same values that we do, let's allow them the grace and the space to explore faith. Let's continue to allow people to explore and to follow and to believe, and let them know it's okay to belong. It's okay to belong here before you believe. It's okay to explore faith here before you embrace faith. And I think that's especially true for all of you who are watching right now online. You don't have to believe to continue to watch each and every week. But also, we don't want you to just keep watching. We want to encourage you to engage through a group. I really want you to, even if you don't believe all this stuff, I want you to step out and try being a part of a group, because this whole thing called Gathering Point will never move past interesting. It's just interesting. I watch each week because it's interesting. It's never going to move past interesting for you until you engage. And man, I really want you to engage. And I realize you may engage and it still may not be for you. But you're never going to know that until you try. So in the meantime, let's all just continue to keep a good reputation in the community. Let's continue to be rich the way that we've been doing over the last few weeks and the last few years. And let's continue to do good. And let's all strive, especially this week. Let's all strive to be like the father in the parable. Do you know why? Because I think he's interesting. I think that guy is uniquely interesting in the way that he loved and searched for his son who was lost. And do you know what we want to do with information? Do you know what we do with information that's interesting to us? We listen. We share. And it changes the way that we think and we act. Can I pray with you today? God, today, thank you so much for sending your son who explained how you work. He explained how you work, and that you're not content with just all the things that you know where they are. You're not content with just taking inventory of all the stuff that you know exactly where it is. But your heart goes out for that which is lost. Like those coins, like the sun. Because when a relationship's lost, there's an impact on eternity, and you want no one to be lost. You want everyone to be found. And so, God, thanks for doing that for us, and help us to have a heart like that for our family, for our neighbors, for our coworkers, that we would invest relationally, and we would allow people the grace and the space to turn back to God, even if they don't believe or share the same values or the same views, but we would create the space and the grace for those people so that we can love them the way that you love us. Jesus, we're so thankful that you're our God. We love you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thanks so much for joining us this week. We want to invite you back next week as we start a new series called Complicated. Why? Because we think this next month is going to be complicated as we continue to move and be the people of God. We'll see you then.